You might be a whiskey snob or a whiskey lover, but are you a whiskey nerd? Well, keep watching because we've got some great whiskey science for you.
All booze making starts the same way, by mixing microorganisms, usually yeast, and sugar. The microbes eat the sugar and makes alcohol as a byproduct of their digestion process, which we call fermentation. And actually, that should be alcohols. The important one, the one that humans like so much, is ethanol. Anyway, whiskey's yeast get the sugar for fermentation from grains, however, which grain depends on what you're drinking. Scotch whiskey mainly uses malted barley. The malting process halts the grain's growth, so it's only partly sprouted. If it's a single malt whiskey, that means it came from a single distillery with only malted barley. Scotch grain whiskeys and American whiskeys use cereal grains like corn and wheat. Bourbon whiskey has to be made from at least 51% corn, while rye whiskey has to be at least 51% rye. There are all kinds of other whiskeys too. We're looking at you, Irish whiskey, but we don't have time to cover everything. You'll just have to ask your bartender.
What separates whiskey from beer and wine is what happens after fermentation. At that point, they're all about 5 to 10% ethanol, but liquors routinely get up to 40 or 50% and even higher. How? Distillation. Distillation is a way to separate different chemicals according to their boiling points. Ethanol boils at 173.1 degrees Fahrenheit. Methanol, which is poisonous and can make you blind, boils at 148.5 degrees Fahrenheit.
So, if you pour your mash, the fermented water grain mixture, into a pot and start heating it, the methanol will boil off first, followed by ethanol. After that, you'll be left with mostly water. Now onto the good stuff. Whiskey needs to retain the flavors from the fermentation, otherwise all liquor would taste like vodka, or worse, Everclear. Whiskey makers have ways to raise the ethanol percentage while retaining all the yummy flavors. The mash is poured into a still and steam is pumped in at the bottom. We should note that the structure of the still depends on the spirit. Scotch is made in pots, but bourbon is made using columns, which separate out even more flavors. Inside these columns is a stack of chambers separated by perforated plates. At the highest, coldest points in the column, the vapor condenses out and drips back down into the hotter zones where the flavor molecules easily dissolve in the ethanol-rich liquid. Flavor molecules like ethylhexanoate, which has an apple-like aroma, or diacetyl, which makes for a buttery taste. Over time, that concentrates the flavor and the alcohol. Thanks, column still. But not all flavors are good flavors, so distillers usually make their column stills from copper or give them copper linings. The copper reacts with sulfur-containing compounds, which often have bad flavors and smells. Hydrogen sulfide is a common one, and no one wants to smell rotten eggs in their glass. So distillation sends all those flavors and ethanol up the column. Near the top, the alcoholic mixture drips out this arm. Since most matches start out the same, it's the distillery's own unique distilling process that really makes their product stand out. Still designs and processing methods used are carefully protected knowledge, putting each distillery's special note on a mash that starts off pretty much the same for everyone.
The key to whiskey's flavor is the aging process, not fermentation. Once we put whiskey in those barrels, it does what it does best, thanks to ethanol. Ethanol is really good about dissolving flavor molecules, so once we've got whiskey in the barrels, it starts leaching all of those delicious flavor chemicals out of the wood of the barrels.
To get even more flavor into the whiskey, the insides of the barrel are charred with flame. That causes chemical reactions in the wood that can produce a whole range of additional flavors. Charring is good for making more phenolic compounds. One of them, guaiacol, has a smoky flavor. Metacresol smells a bit like Band-Aids and shows up in Scotch, mostly thanks to the peaty smoke that's used in Scotch distilling.
I love Scotch. Scotch is Scotch.
Changes in atmospheric pressure and temperature throughout the year force whiskey in and out of the wood as it ages, helping it to pick up more of those flavor molecules. That's one reason connoisseurs insist aging increases the depth of a whiskey's taste. Actually, some whiskey makers are trying to see if there's a shortcut for that. Some high-tech distillers are experimenting with using sound waves or varying pressure to artificially speed up whiskey aging, which some traditionalists are very into. But these newcomers think they can reduce the aging process from years to mere hours.
Who's ready for a drink? The next time you're enjoying whiskey with your friends, you can regale them with all the whiskey chemistry you learned from today's video. A special thanks to District Distilling Company for letting us film today, and thank you for watching.